Today on this blustery day, I'm here at the iconic track at Laguna Seca near Monterey, California, taking a look at the most performance-oriented sedan that Acura has ever built. For the Type S, Acura did more than just simply install a higher horsepower engine under the hood. They've also tweaked every aspect of the TLX to make sure that this is the sportiest version so far. So we have a tweaked 10-speed automatic transmission to handle more power, improved cooling, a different grille up front, bigger brakes, suspension tweaks front and rear, and tweaks to the structure of the TLX itself to make the body more rigid and improve handling and, of course, the handling feel. But the basics of the TLX remain the same. So if you're a fan of the TLX and you just want TLX to the next level, that's the Type S. Unfortunately, if you want to know how the TLX Type S drives and how much it costs, you'll have to come back on May 20th for that. In this video, we're going to take a look around the outside and around the inside and see how this differs from the regular TLX. Starting out up front, we see subtle tweaks versus the regular TLX, blacked out accents just as you'd expect in a sporty trim, blacked out headlights, no fog lights below because all of these openings are reserved for improved cooling. Acura says this has at least 10% better cooling than the regular TLX. That's all necessary because we get the more powerful engine under the hood. The biggest difference perhaps is in the grille, where we get a different design grille than we find in the regular TLX. It shares a similar theme, but instead of solid elements we have open elements here, these little triangular shapes. That's to improve cooling for the engine. There's a black chin splitter at the bottom of the front bumper. You can see the air-to-air intercooler there just below the main grille and those restyled grille elements, big Type S logo right there. And only the outboard vent over here on the driver's side is functional. The one on the passenger side is mainly blocked off, but there's a small opening on this side to help relieve pressure up front and direct it through the wheel well. No performance car would be complete without wide grippy tires and big brakes, so we find both of them up here. This is a 4-piston Brembo brake standard on the TLX Type S. This is the optional summer tire, but whether you get the all-season or the summer tires, they remain the same size, 255/35 R20. That's a pretty low-profile tire, so if you're worried about rim damage, definitely keep that in mind. This is the optional lightweight wheel. It's bundled with the summer tires, and this helps reduce weight by about 28 pounds or so total vehicle. The big benefit, of course, is unsprung weight, so it helps the suspension perform a little bit better. According to Acura, the TLX competes in the compact luxury sedan segment, even though on the outside the dimensions are closer to the BMW 5 Series, at 194.6 inches long and over 75 inches wide. That gives us a slightly wider cabin than we find in the average compact luxury sedan, so that really makes the interior feel a bit more spacious. But we do have about the same kind of combined legroom figures that you'll find in most of the European competition. That's front room plus rear legroom combined. That's because we have this really long hood profile up front. Acura really stretched the nose of the TLX out to give it a more sexy profile and a longer dash-to-axle ratio. But because the V6 engine is still transversely mounted up front, we still have the telltale long overhang that we've seen in the Acura TLX for a while. Acura does a good job of hiding the long front overhang, however, by really sculpting the front end and making it appear very pointy. Moving to the rear, we get some angry tail lamp modules. These are full LEDs, including the turn signals, and these huge quad exhaust tips below. The TLX Type S gets an active exhaust system, so the inner exhaust tips on each side are valved. The ones on the outside are normally open. Depending on the drive mode that you're in, either the valves will open at higher RPMs or they will just remain open the entire time. If you don't want to wake your neighbors, start the vehicle in the less aggressive drive modes and the valves will stay closed. If you want to wake everybody in the neighborhood up, start it in Sport Plus. The valve stays open and the idle speed increases. As with the front, Acura has deleted most of the chrome back here except for the badging and the Acura logo. You can optionally get a carbon fiber spoiler, some carbon fiber splitter elements below, and carbon fiber trim on the inside. Acura reserves the biggest change for under the hood. Instead of the 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo we find in the regular TLX, we have a 3-liter 6-cylinder turbocharged engine. It's a single turbo design. The turbo is over there on the driver's side of the vehicle, just above the 10-speed automatic transmission. The 10-speed automatic transmission is unique to this vehicle. It is a strengthened version of the 10-speed that you'll find in other Acura models. This is mated to a standard super handling all-wheel drive system, which under certain circumstances can send 70% of engine power to the rear axle and then 100% of that 70% to a single rear wheel, because this does have torque vectoring. Interestingly enough, this is the only torque vectoring option in this segment. By segment, I mean vehicles that are close in price to the TLX, because obviously you can find vehicles out there with a torque vectoring rear axle, but you're going to pay considerably more for those vehicles than this Acura. The engine is good for 355 horsepower and 354 pound-feet of torque, and according to Acura, it will develop all that horsepower and all that torque even in first gear. Acura chose to use one turbo with a twin scroll design rather than two turbos like you find in some of the luxury competition for a few logical reasons. The first one is packaging. It makes the engine a little bit more compact, easier to stuff under this hood. It's also going to result in lower long-term maintenance costs because you have less plumbing and of course just one turbo to worry about. It also makes the Type S less expensive because you just have one turbo to buy rather than a V6 with twin turbos. Even though the Type S is the pinnacle of the TLX lineup, we don't find all the same features that you find in the 2-liter model. For instance, we don't have a heads-up display. However, we do have basically the same seat motions that we find in the upper-end trims. This has a power-extending thigh cushion, 4-way adjustable lumbar support, and inflatable side bolsters. The seat frame itself is very similar to the rest of the TLX lineup, but these are more sport-oriented seats, and the fabric and the design of the seat is a little bit different. We have a manual tilt telescopic steering column here with a pretty decent range of motion. Hopping into the back seat, we find a very similar amount of combined legroom to the average compact luxury sedan. You'll see that I have about 4 inches or so of legroom over here on the driver's side. I do tend to like a front seat that's a little bit closer to the steering wheel, especially if I'm driving a vehicle with a bit more sporting potential. If I go over here to the passenger side, this front seat was comfortably adjusted for me in more of a passenger seating position, and I have about 3 inches of legroom left. Bear in mind that this is competing with compact luxury sedans, so we have very compact luxury dimensions back here, especially when it comes to headroom right here in the middle seat position. Obviously, I can't sit very comfortably there, but I could sit in the outboard seating positions. My head does touch the ceiling, however. I can't actually put it back there towards the headrest because headroom is a little bit more limited back here than you might think. But the TLX feels a bit more spacious than some of the numbers would indicate, because this is about 4 inches wider than the average European compact luxury sedan, and you will certainly notice that in the back seat, where the rear bench is wider and a little bit softer padded and just a little bit more luxurious feeling than in some of those compact options. The model that I'm in today has the lightest interior available. This is sort of an ivory leather. We have a hard black plastic back to the rear seat that helps improve durability, especially if you have kids in the car and they're constantly kicking the back of the seat. Air vents right back there in the center console. Rear passengers get an armrest with 2 cup holders in it. Acura added cross bracing to the TLX right back here behind the rear seats to improve rigidity, but they retained the 60/40 folding rear seat design. This is certainly more practical than vehicles where they delete it, although obviously these bars are in the way, so you couldn't put cargo quite as large as you might like from the cargo area right here into the passenger area, but we still have this large area where you could certainly put skis, long items, things like that, and you can definitely get some luggage right there through that triangular opening. Cargo capacity remains the same as the regular TLX model. I have a 22-inch roller bag right back there. You still find the releases for the rear seat backs right back here in the trunk. And if we take a dive under the cargo area load floor, this is where we find a can of Fix-A-Flat, and then under this foam divider, we find the 12-volt battery. The bulk of the interior is shared with the rest of the TLX lineup, so we have a pretty standard-sized moonroof right here over the driver and front passengers' heads, 4-way adjustable headrests and height-adjustable shoulder belts. The upholstery is a combination of premium leather and imitation suede accents. These seats are ventilated as well as heated. If we move on over to the front doors, we find basically the same sort of components that we find in the regular TLX model, although obviously we get unique trim for the Type S. Now, in an interesting twist, Acura says that a ton of different trim options are available from your dealer in the Type S. So if you want carbon fiber interior panels, these are relatively inexpensive and easy to swap. And if you'd rather have a wood look in here, you can also swap in some of the real wood panels from the rest of the TLX lineup. Moving over to the dashboard, we have the same sort of design that we find in the rest of the TLX lineup, with sort of a double cockpit feel. The stitched dashboard definitely adds to the premium feel in here. There are a lot of soft touch components lower, and then we find a bin style glove compartment. In the middle of the dashboard, we have Acura's somewhat controversial infotainment system. This is not a touchscreen, it is a touchpad style system, although it does support Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Below this, we have 2 large air vents, the controls for the dual zone automatic climate control system, heated and ventilated seats along with an auto mode for the seat controls. We then have this large dynamic mode dial right here, very front and center. This rotates through the 5 different drive modes available: normal, comfort, sport, and then if I click and hold, Sport Plus. There's also an individual mode. If I hit that dynamic mode button right there, you can configure the mode right here in the infotainment screen. You can choose between 3 different settings for the engine. There are a bunch of different steering options, suspension options, and you can even link your ambient lighting to your drive mode. The suspension and the steering are definitely differently tuned than you find in the regular TLX model. Acura says that they wanted the drive modes to feel a bit more distinct than in that regular trim. We then have Acura's Hunt and Peck style shifter here, auto start, stop, enable, disable, and then brake hold button right there. It's worth noting that you can use that individual drive mode to automatically turn on or off your auto start-stop system. Below that, we have the touchpad controller for that somewhat infamous infotainment system. This is an absolute positioning system, so if my finger is down here on the lower left of the pad, then you'll notice it's down there on the lower left of the screen. If I'm up here on the upper right side, then it's right there on the upper right of the screen. This other side is used for scrolling. We then have a power volume knob, track forward, backward, 2 large cup holders there, a wrist rest, and a really large Qi wireless charging mat. It even extends just under that center armrest. I definitely had enough room for larger smartphones there. We find the USB input for the infotainment system over here, along with a 12-volt and USB charging port. As I said before, no heads-up display on the driver's side, and somewhat surprisingly, no full LCD instrument cluster either, even though we do find that on the new Acura MDX. I hope that they bring that to the TLX soon, because it definitely gives the interior a different feel than this analog gauge design, although some people in performance vehicles seem to prefer a traditional analog gauge. The tachometer definitely has a sporty feel with that really big red line zone over there. This engine red lines just over 6,000 RPM. We have a large color LCD right in the middle, and then over on this side we have a 160 mile-an-hour speedometer. The Type S gets a unique steering wheel with a split bottom spoke, flat rim on the bottom, perforated leather sections on the sides, paddle shifters on the back. You'll find the controls for the standard adaptive cruise control over here on the left side of the wheel, and then for the infotainment system over here on the right side. As always, thanks for watching. Be sure and hit that subscribe button at the bottom of your screen if you haven't already done so, because on May 20th, I'll be able to tell you how the TLX Type S drives out on the road and, of course, out on the track here at Laguna Seca. And in the meantime, if you plan on getting your hands on a TLX Type S yourself, be sure and call your Acura dealer now, because they're probably already taking names and deliveries will happen sometime later this summer. In the meantime, head over to facebook.com/AlexNautos so you can see what I'm driving this week, Instagram, Twitter, all those other social places, and of course, check out the merch store at AOAmerch.com. I'll see all of you later.